The arrival. The vast atrium of the Galactic University of Sciences hummed with activity as students from 1,000 worlds milled about, their tentacles, appendages, and various sensory organs twitching with excitement. Today was no ordinary day at the most prestigious institution in the known universe. Today, they would welcome their first human student. Zix-427, a Vexillion with shimmering scales and multifaceted eyes, clung to the ceiling, his sticky pads allowing him a perfect vantage point at the entrance. Beside him, or rather below him, his best friend Blorp, an amorphous blob of sentient goo, quivered with anticipation. "Can you see anything yet?" Blorp burbled, a series of tiny bubbles forming and popping on his gelatinous surface. Zix's compound eyes swiveled, scanning the crowd. "Nothingy. Wait. The doors are opening." A hush fell over the atrium as the massive doors slid apart with a pneumatic hiss. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the harsh light of the three suns outside, was a figure that seemed both familiar and alien to the assembled students. The human stepped forward, and a collective gasp rippled through the crowd. She stood on two legs, her body covered in some kind of protective fabric, with a mop of long, dark filaments sprouting from the top of her head. Two eyes, startlingly white with colored centers, darted around the room, taking in the alien faces with what seemed like excitement rather than fear. "Greetings, everyone," the human called out, her voice carrying across the atrium. "I'm Sarah Chen, exchange student from Earth. It's an honor to be here." Murmurs broke out among the alien students. Earth, the infamous Deathworld that had spawned a species so resilient, so adaptable, that they had survived conditions that would annihilate most other life forms in the galaxy. Professor Psylop, a towering insectoid being who served as the university's Dean of Interspecies Relations, stepped forward. "Welcome, Sarah Chen of Earth. We are most pleased to have you join us at the Galactic University of Sciences. I trust your journey was survivable." Sarah laughed, a sound that caused several nearby students to flinch. "Oh, it was great. A little boring, maybe. 20 years in cryosleep isn't exactly my idea of an exciting trip, but hey, I'm here now." Zix-427 nearly lost his grip on the ceiling. "Did she say boring?" he whispered to Blorp. "A journey that would liquefy most species' internal organs. And she found it boring." Blorp rippled in agreement. Perhaps the stories about humans are true after all. As Sarah made her way through the crowd, aliens parted before her like a force field was pushing them aside. Some reached out tentatively with various appendages, curious to touch this creature from legend, only to pull back at the last moment, fear overcoming their scientific curiosity. Sarah, for her part, seemed oblivious to the effect she was having. She smiled and waved, occasionally reaching out to shake hands, or tentacles, or pseudopods, with particularly brave individuals. "I love what you've done with the place," she said, gazing up at the crystalline dome that arched over the atrium, refracting the light of the three suns into a dazzling array of colors. "Reminds me of the biodomes back home on Mars." Professor Xylop's antennae twitched. "Mars? I was under the impression you hailed from Earth." "Oh, I do," Sarah replied casually. "But I grew up in the Martian colonies. 4th-generation Martian. Actually, Earth was a bit too tame for my great-grandparents." A floatling student nearby, who had been hovering contentedly, suddenly lost control of its buoyancy and plummeted to the floor with a soft splat. Zix-427 couldn't contain himself any longer. He scuttled down the wall and approached Sarah, his natural caution warring with his insatiable curiosity. "Excuse me, Sarah of Earth and Mars," he began, his voice quavering slightly. "Is it true that your species voluntarily exposes itself to dangerous radiations for the purpose of altering skin pigmentation?" Sarah's eyes lit up. "Oh, you mean tanning?" "Yeah, some people do that. Personally, I prefer the natural look. Besides, with the radiation levels on Mars, you have to be careful not to overdo it." Blorp oozed closer, emboldened by his friend's bravery. And do you really ingest substances that temporarily impair your cognitive functions for enjoyment? Well, not me personally, Sarah said with a laugh. But yeah, alcohol is pretty popular back home. Though these days, a lot of people prefer neurostims. You get the fun without the hangover, you know. The alien students exchanged bewildered glances. This human casually discussed practices that would be considered extreme forms of self-harm on most worlds. Professor Xylop cleared his throat, or what passed for a throat in his species. Perhaps, Ms. Chen, we should proceed to your orientation. I'm sure your fellow students have many more questions, but there will be time for cultural exchange later. As Sarah followed the professor out of the atrium, the assembled aliens burst into excited chatter. Zix 427 turned to Blorp, his scales shifting colors rapidly in his agitation. Can you believe it? He chittered. Everything we've heard about humans. It might all be true. And we're going to be studying alongside one. Blorp formed a rudimentary eye stalk to better observe the departing human. I have a feeling, he burbled, that this semester is going to be far more exciting than we anticipated. Little did they know just how right Blort's prediction would prove to be. As Sarah Chen settled into her new life at the Galactic University of Sciences, she would challenge everything the alien students thought they knew about life, survival, and what it meant to be truly adaptable. The arrival of this seemingly unassuming human was about to turn their world upside down, sometimes quite literally. And as the doors closed behind Sarah and Professor Xylop, a tremor of anticipation ran through the assembled aliens. Whether from fear, excitement, or a mix of both, one thing was certain: life at the Galactic University of Sciences would never be the same again. The presentation. 2 solar cycles had passed since Sarah Chen's arrival at the Galactic University of Sciences, and the initial shock of her presence had begun to wear off. While many alien students still gave her a wide berth in the hallways, a brave few had started to engage with her, fascinated by the stories she told of her homeworld. Today, however, was the day the entire student body had been anxiously anticipating. Sarah was scheduled to give a presentation on Earth in the Grand Lecture Hall, as part of the Worlds of Origin seminar series. Zix 427 and Blorp arrived early, securing prime seats near the front. The lecture hall quickly filled to capacity, with students of all shapes and sizes jostling for position. Some even clung to the walls or hovered near the ceiling, determined not to miss a moment of the presentation. Professor Xylop introduced Sarah, his antennae quivering with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Students, please give your full attention to Sarah Chen, who will be sharing insights about her homeworld, Earth, a Class 12 Deathworld. Sarah stepped up to the podium, her smile bright and oblivious to the tension in the room. Thanks, Professor. Hi, everyone. Ready to learn about Earth? A nervous titter ran through the audience. Sarah activated the holographic display, and a beautiful blue and green orb materialized above the podium. This is Earth, Sarah began, her voice filled with pride. Our home, our cradle, and as you guys keep reminding me, apparently a death trap of epic proportions. She chuckled, but the alien students remained silent, their various sensory organs fixed on the slowly rotating hologram. Now, I know you've all heard stories about Earth, but let me give you the real scoop. First off, let's talk about our lovely atmosphere. The hologram zoomed in, showing layers of gases surrounding the planet. Earth's atmosphere is primarily nitrogen and oxygen. Now, I know oxygen is considered highly toxic on many of your worlds, but for us, it's the stuff of life. We literally can't live without it. A gaseous entity student in the back row fainted, its vapor form briefly dispersing before its emergency containment field kicked in. Sarah continued, oblivious to the growing unease in the room. Of course, too much of a good thing can be bad. At high pressures, oxygen becomes toxic even for us. That's why deep-sea diving can be so dangerous. She flashed an image of a human in diving gear, surrounded by dark, crushing waters. Some of our oceans are so deep that the pressure would crush most spacecraft. but we found ways to explore even these extreme environments. Zix-427 leaned over to Blorp, his voice a horrified whisper. They willingly submerge themselves in molecular dihydrogen monoxide. At lethal pressures. Blorp quivered in agreement, too stunned to form words. Sarah moved on to the next topic. Now, let's talk weather. Earth has some of the most diverse and exciting weather patterns in the galaxy. The hologram shifted to show roiling storm clouds and flashes of lightning. We've got everything from gentle rains to hurricanes that can reshape coastlines. Oh, and don't forget tornadoes, swirling vortexes of wind that can toss vehicles around like toys. She played a video of storm chasers pursuing a tornado, their excited whoops audible over the roar of the wind. Some humans even chase these storms for fun. A collective gasp rose from the audience. Professor Xylop's exoskeleton had turned a pale, sickly green. But it's not all about storms, Sarah continued cheerfully. We've also got earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis. Really keeps you on your toes. The hologram displayed a series of natural disasters, each more terrifying than the last. Several students quietly excused themselves from the lecture hall, looking distinctly unwell. Of course, we can't talk about Earth without mentioning our diverse ecosystems, Sarah said, switching gears. From scorching deserts to frozen tundras, lush rainforests to barren mountains, Earth has it all. She began rapid-firing facts about various biomes, each revelation more shocking than the last to her alien audience. In the deserts, temperatures can swing from blazing hot to freezing cold in a single day. The rainforests are home to countless species, many of which are venomous or carnivorous. Oh, and don't get me started on Australia. Practically everything there can kill you. But it's a popular tourist destination. Zix-427 scales had gone completely white, a sign of extreme distress in his species. Blorp had lost all cohesion and was slowly oozing under his seat. Sarah, warming to her subject, moved on to discuss human activities. Now you might think with all these natural challenges, we'd be content to play it safe. But nope. We humans love pushing our limits. She showcased images of extreme sports. People leaping from cliffs with wingsuits, surfing giant waves, free climbing sheer rock faces. We've got sports where the whole point is to risk life and limb. Isn't that cool? Sarah beamed at her audience, mistaking their horrified silence for awed appreciation. But wait, there's more, Sarah exclaimed, moving on to her next slide. Let's talk about our diet. We humans are omnivores, which means we eat both plants and animals. Several herbivorous species in the audience looked like they might be sick. We've developed all sorts of interesting culinary practices. For instance, we deliberately cultivate bacteria and fungi to ferment our foods. Some of our most prized delicacies are basically controlled rot. She showed images of cheese, yogurt, and kombucha. And don't even get me started on our beverages. We drink dihydrogen monoxide in its liquid form every day. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Sarah, misinterpreting the reaction, grinned wider. I know, wild right. But that's not all. We also consume beverages that would be considered toxic on many worlds. Alcohol, caffeine. Some humans can't even start their day without a dose of caffeine. Professor Xylop, who had been growing increasingly agitated, finally stepped in. Thank you, Ms. Chen, for that illuminating presentation. Perhaps we should move on to the Q&A portion. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. Great idea. Who has questions? The lecture hall was silent for a long moment. Then, trembling slightly, Zix-427 raised a limb. Ah yes, he stuttered. If your world is so incredibly dangerous, why do you stay there? Sarah looked puzzled. Stay there? Oh, you mean why don't we leave? Well, why would we? Earth is home. Sure, it's got its challenges, but that's what makes life interesting. Besides, we're already working on terraforming Mars and Venus to be more like Earth. Give us a few centuries, and we'll have a whole system of Deathworlds to call home. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah looked around the room, suddenly aware of the pale, shocked faces, or equivalent sensory organs, of her fellow students. "Was it something I said?" she asked, genuinely confused. As the alien students filed out of the lecture hall, many of them shaking or oozing or vibrating with fear, Sarah couldn't help but feel that her presentation hadn't gone quite as well as she'd hoped. Little did she know that her candid description of life on Earth had just cemented humanity's reputation as the most terrifying species in the known galaxy. Professor Psylop, his exoskeleton still a sickly shade of green, approached Sarah. "Ms. Chen, I believe we need to have a discussion about cultural sensitivity." Sarah nodded, still bewildered. As she followed the professor out of the lecture hall, the whispers of the alien students followed her. In classrooms and dormitories across the university, frightened discussions were breaking out. The humans' presentation had not been just a lecture. It had been a revelation, a horrifying glimpse into a world that defied their understanding of what was survivable. The Galactic University of Sciences would never be the same again. And for Sarah Chen, this was just the beginning of her journey to bridge the vast gulf of understanding between her species and the rest of the galactic community. Alien Fallout. In the days following Sarah Chen's Earth presentation, the Galactic University of Sciences was abuzz with nervous energy. Rumors spread faster than a Zorgon plague, each retelling of Sarah's lecture growing more outlandish than the last. By the end of the week, some students were convinced that humans bathed in acid and juggled antimatter for fun. Zix 427 found himself in the unenviable position of being the go-to source for human information, thanks to his brief interaction with Sarah during the Q&A session. He clung to the library ceiling, trying to focus on his cynobiology textbook, when a group of Methan brothers drifted up to him. "Zix," one burbled through its translator, "is it true that humans drink molten rocks for breakfast?" Zix's scales shifted to a pattern of exasperation. "No, that's ridiculous. They drink dihydrogen monoxide. Remember, liquid water." The Methan brothers vibrated with shock. "But that's even worse. Dihydrogen monoxide is highly corrosive." Before Zix could respond, Blorp oozed up the wall to join them. "I heard from a photosynthetic that humans deliberately expose themselves to high-energy radiation to alter their skin pigmentation. For vanity." Zix sighed, his compound eyes rolling in their sockets. "Yes, Sarah mentioned that. They call it tanning. But not all humans do it." A passing crystalline chimed in, its facets glittering with excitement. "Did you know they have sports where they throw themselves off high places with nothing but a piece of fabric to slow their fall? They call it skydiving." The group fell into an awed and horrified silence, contemplating the apparent death wish of the human species. Meanwhile, in Professor Xylop's office, Sarah sat fidgeting in a chair designed for a species with significantly more appendages than her own. "Ms. Chen," Xylop began, his antennae twitching nervously, "I'm afraid your presentation has caused quite a stir among the student body." Sarah's brow furrowed. "I don't understand, Professor. I just talked about everyday life on Earth. Was I supposed to make something up?" Psylop's compound eyes blinked in rapid succession. No, honesty is always appreciated. It's just, perhaps we should have prepared the students better. Many of them come from worlds where the conditions you described would be immediately lethal." Sarah's eyes widened in realization. Oh no, I didn't mean to scare anyone." "I know you didn't," Tylop said gently. "But the fact remains that many students are now, well, terrified of you, and by extension, of humanity." Sarah slumped in her chair. "Great. I came here to learn about other cultures and share my own, not to become the campus boogeyman." Tylop's translator took a moment to process the unfamiliar term. "Boogeyman. It's a—" "Never mind," Sarah sighed. "What can I do to fix this, Professor?" Tylop's antennae waved thoughtfully. "Perhaps a more controlled introduction to human culture would be beneficial, something that showcases the less extreme aspects of your civilization. Sarah perked up. Like an Earth Culture Day. We could have food, music, maybe some low-key sports demonstrations. That could work. Psylop agreed cautiously. But please, Ms. Chen, nothing too exciting. I don't think the student body could handle another shock like your presentation. As Sarah left the office, her mind buzzing with ideas for the Culture Day, she nearly collided with a hovering floatling student. The poor creature let out a high-pitched whistle of fear and zoomed away, leaving a trail of panicked pheromones in its wake. Sarah watched it go, her heart sinking. This is going to be harder than I thought, she muttered to herself. In the cafeteria, a group of students from various species huddled around a table, picking at their nutrient cubes and synthesized proteins. The topic of conversation, as it had been all week, was the terrifying human in their midst. I heard they sleep for hours at a time, a nocturnal whispered, its huge eyes wide with disbelief. They voluntarily become unconscious every single day. A silicon-based life form vibrated with anxiety. That's nothing. Apparently, they live on a planet with a molten core. The ground beneath their feet could split open at any moment. Well, I think it's fascinating. A lone voice piped up. All eyes, or sensory organs, turned to Zix 427, who had just arrived with Blorp. Fascinating. A hive mind drone buzzed incredulously. They're clearly insane. No rational species would evolve on such a deadly planet, let alone choose to stay there. Blorp rippled in agreement. It does seem rather illogical. Zix's scales flushed with a pattern indicating deep thought. But think about it. If their world is so dangerous, doesn't that make their achievements even more impressive? They've not only survived but thrived. They've reached the stars, just like us. A thoughtful silence fell over the group, broken only by the soft whirring of a robotic student processing this new perspective. Besides, Zix continued, warming to his topic, Sarah seems nice. Scary, yes, but not malicious. Maybe we should try to understand them instead of just fearing them. The hive mind drone's antennae drooped slightly. Perhaps you're right, but understanding them might be more terrifying than ignorance. As the discussion continued, Sarah entered the cafeteria. The room fell silent, all eyes, and other sensory apparatuses, turning to watch her warily. She smiled nervously and waved, causing a nearby gelatinous student to quiver so hard it nearly lost cohesion. Sarah sighed and made her way to the nutrient dispenser. As she pondered the entirely unfamiliar menu, she couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation resuming behind her. Do you think she eats solid matter? I heard humans can regrow lost limbs. Nonsense. You're thinking of axolotls. Humans just replace body parts with machinery. Sarah closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and reminded herself why she had come to the Galactic University in the first place. She was here to learn, to understand, to bridge the gap between her people and the myriad species of the galaxy. It was going to be a long semester. As she turned with her tray of unidentifiable nutrient paste, Sarah caught Zix's eye. The Vexillion gave her what she hoped was an encouraging wave of his upper left appendage. Sarah smiled back, a spark of hope kindling in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to turn this around. With renewed determination, Sarah began planning her Earth Culture Day. She was going to show her fellow students that humans were more than just Deathworld survivors. They were artists, scientists, dreamers, and explorers. And if she had to start by proving that not everything on Earth was trying to kill them, well, that was a challenge Sarah Chen was more than ready to face. Little did Sarah know that her efforts to demystify humanity would soon be put to the ultimate test as a crisis loomed on the horizon, one that would challenge everything the alien students thought they knew about humans and force them to confront their fears in ways they never imagined. Cultural exchange. The day of Sarah Chen's Earth Culture Festival arrived. bringing with it a mix of anticipation and trepidation among the alien student body. The university's grand atrium had been transformed overnight, with holographic displays showcasing Earth's diverse landscapes, art, and achievements. Sarah stood at the entrance, greeting students with a warm smile. She had traded her usual attire for traditional Chinese clothing, a vibrant red kippah that drew curious looks from passing aliens. "Welcome, everyone," she called out cheerfully. "Come on in and experience a little slice of Earth." Zix 427 was among the first to enter, his scales shimmering with an excited blue hue. Blorp oozed along beside him, curiosity overcoming his usual caution. "I must admit, I'm intrigued," Zix chittered to his friend. "Perhaps we've been too quick to judge humans based on their planet's dangers." Blorp formed a pseudopod in agreement. "Indeed, though I'm still wary of anything they call food." The festival was divided into several zones, each showcasing a different aspect of Earth culture. Sarah had been careful to choose elements that wouldn't terrify her alien classmates too much. In the arts and entertainment zone, holographic displays showed clips from Earth movies and television shows. A group of photosynthetics clustered around a screen playing nature documentaries, their leaves rustling with delight at the images of Earth's lush forests and colorful flowers. Nearby, a melodic being swayed in rhythm to a selection of Earth music, its crystalline body resonating with the unfamiliar harmonies. "Fascinating," it chimed. "They use atmospheric vibrations for communication and enjoyment, just as we do." In the science and technology area, Sarah had set up interactive displays showcasing human innovations. A robotics student was particularly enthralled by a demonstration of Earth's space exploration history. They achieved spaceflight using controlled explosions. It beeped in astonishment. The inefficiency is appalling, yet the audacity is admirable. Zix and Blor found themselves drawn to the sports and recreation zone. Sarah was there, demonstrating a game called basketball to a group of bewildered aliens. "So, the goal is to throw this spherical object through an elevated circular opening," a tentacled being asked, its appendages wrapped around a basketball. Sarah nodded encouragingly. "That's right. Give it a try." The tentacled student launched the ball with surprising accuracy, sending it swishing through the hoop. A cheer went up from the watching aliens. "Remarkable," Zix exclaimed. "A game that improves both physical coordination and spatial awareness. Perhaps humans are not solely focused on survival after all." Sarah beamed at him. "Exactly. We play sports for fun, fitness, and social bonding. It's not all about training for survival, though I guess it doesn't hurt to be in shape when you live on a death world," she added with a wink. As the day progressed, the initial wariness of the alien students began to fade. They found themselves laughing at Earth jokes, even if they didn't always understand them, marveling at human art, and even cautiously sampling some Earth cuisine. In the food area, Blorp watched in fascination as Sarah demonstrated the art of making sushi. "You mean to tell me," Blorp burbled, "that humans intentionally consume raw aquatic life forms wrapped in vegetation?" Sarah nodded, expertly rolling a California roll. "Yep, it's considered a delicacy in many Earth cultures. Want to try some?" Blorp quivered uncertainly, then extended a pseudopod to accept a piece of sushi. As he absorbed it into his gelatinous form, his entire body pulsed with surprise. "This is not unpleasant," he admitted, "though the texture is most unusual." Sarah grinned. "Wait until you try wasabi." As the festival reached its peak, Professor Dilop made his way through the crowd, his antennae twitching with a mix of concern and curiosity. He found Sarah demonstrating a virtual reality game to a group of enthralled hive mind drones. "Ms. Chen," he buzzed, "I must say, this event has exceeded my expectations." The students seemed to be enjoying themselves. Sarah's face lit up. "Really? Oh, I'm so glad. I was worried it might be too much. But everyone's been so open-minded and curious." Cyclops' compound eyes blinked in rapid succession, his version of a smile. Indeed, it seems your species has more to offer than mere survival skills. Though I must admit, some of your entertainment still puzzles me. This roller coaster simulation, for instance. He gestured to a VR station where a floatling was experiencing a virtual roller coaster ride, its gaseous form rippling with a mix of terror and exhilaration. Sarah chuckled. Yeah, that one's a bit intense. But hey, at least now they know we do scary things for fun, not just out of necessity. As the day wound down, Zix approached Sarah, his scales now a warm, friendly orange. Sarah, he chittered, I want to thank you for this event. It has been most illuminating. I believe I speak for many when I say that we have gained a new appreciation for your species. Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. Thanks, Zix. That means a lot to me. I just wanted everyone to see that humans are more than just survivors. We create, we play, we explore, not because we have to, but because we want to. Blorp oozed up beside them, still digesting his sushi experience. Indeed, though I must ask, is all-earth cuisine so adventurous? Sarah laughed. Oh, Blorp, you haven't seen anything yet. Wait until I introduce you to molecular gastronomy. As the last of the students filed out of the atrium, chattering excitedly about their favorite parts of the festival, Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her. She had taken the first step in bridging the gap between her world and theirs. Little did she know that this newfound understanding would soon be put to the test, as the Galactic University of Sciences settled into a new normal, with humans no longer seen as merely terrifying Deathworlders. A new challenge loomed on the horizon, one that would require all of Sarah's ingenuity and her alien classmates' newfound trust in humanity. The cultural exchange had been a success, but the real test of interspecies cooperation was yet to come, and when it did, the fate of the university, and perhaps the galaxy itself, would hang in the balance. Unity in diversity. 2 cycles after the Earth Culture Festival, life at the Galactic University of Sciences had settled into a new rhythm. Sarah Chen was no longer viewed as a terrifying anomaly, but as a fascinating, if still somewhat intimidating, classmate. Alien students had begun to approach her with questions about Earth, and Sarah found herself enjoying her role as an unofficial ambassador for humanity. However, the peace was about to be shattered in a way no one could have predicted. It began as a normal day. Sarah was in the quantum mechanics lab, working on a group project with Zix 427, Blorp, and a crystalline student named Facet. Suddenly, the lab's emergency alert system blared to life, its multi-spectrum warnings designed to be perceivable by all species. Attention all students and faculty. Professor Xylop's voice echoed through the campus-wide communication system. We are experiencing a severe malfunction in the university's gravitational stabilizers. Please remain calm and proceed to your designated safety zones. Sarah's human ears could pick up the stress in Xylop's voice. This was no drill. As if to emphasize the point, the artificial gravity flickered, causing everyone in the lab to float momentarily before crashing back to the ground. Beakers shattered, delicate equipment sparked, and students of various species cried out in alarm. What's happening? Facet chimed, their crystalline body vibrating with fear. Sarah's survival instincts, honed by a lifetime on Earth and Mars, kicked in. We need to get to the safety zone. Now. As they made their way out of the lab, the true scope of the crisis became apparent. The hallways were chaos, with students of all species struggling against the fluctuating gravity. Some floated helplessly, while others were pinned to the floor by sudden increases in gravitational force. The stabilizers must be completely malfunctioning. Zix chittered, clinging to the wall with his sticky pads. If they fail entirely, the station could be torn apart, Sarah finished grimly. We need to find a way to fix this. Blorp, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly burbled with excitement. The maintenance tunnels. They lead directly to the central core where the stabilizers are housed. Sarah nodded. Good thinking, Blorp. But those tunnels are going to be a death trap with the gravity going haywire. Perhaps not for everyone. Facet chimed in. My crystalline structure is highly resistant to gravitational stress, and I can adhere to surfaces regardless of gravity, Zix added. Sarah looked at her friends, a plan forming in her mind. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Facet, you and Zix will navigate the maintenance tunnels to the core. Blorp and I will head to the control room and try to guide you from there. As they split up, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at how quickly her alien classmates had risen to the challenge. The fear of humans and their death world seemed forgotten in the face of this crisis. In the control room, Sarah and Blorp found Professor Xylop and a team of engineers frantically working to stabilize the system. Miss Chen, Mr. Blorp, Xylop buzzed in surprise. What are you doing here? Sarah quickly explained their plan. Xylop's antennae twitched with a mix of concern and admiration. It's dangerous, but it might be our best shot. The main access to the core is blocked by debris. As Sarah and Blorp coordinated with Zix and Facet through the communication system, guiding them through the treacherous tunnels, the situation grew more dire. The gravitational fluctuations were increasing in intensity and frequency. We're almost there, Zix's voice crackled through the comm. But there's a problem. The final access hatch is sealed. We can see the stabilizer core, but we can't reach it. Sarah's mind raced. The emergency release, it's manually operated, isn't it? Yes, Xylop confirmed. But in this gravitational flux, the force required to open it would be lethal to most species, Sarah finished. She took a deep breath. But maybe not to a human from a high-gravity world. Blorp quivered in alarm. Sarah, you can't. The tunnels are my only shot, Sarah said firmly. Professor, I'm going in. Before anyone could stop her, Sarah was racing through the chaotic hallways toward the maintenance tunnel access. Her body, conditioned by life on Mars and Earth, fought against the wild gravitational swings. Where other students were incapacitated, Sarah pushed through, her determination fueled by the knowledge that everyone's lives were at stake. In the tunnels, Sarah battled against forces that threatened to crush or fling her at every turn. Her muscles screamed, her bones creaked, but she pressed on. Finally, she reached Zix and Facet at the sealed hatch. Sarah, Zix exclaimed, you shouldn't be here. No time to argue, Sarah grunted, positioning herself at the manual release. When I open this, you two need to get in there and realign the core. Ready. With a Herculean effort, Sarah wrenched the release mechanism. The hatch swung open, and Zix and Facet darted inside. Sarah collapsed, her body pushed beyond its limits. Moments later, the gravitational fluctuations ceased. A cheer echoed through the station's communication system. They had done it. In the aftermath, as medical teams of various species tended to the injured, Sarah found herself surrounded by her classmates. Their eyes, tentacles, and sensory organs all focused on her with a new kind of respect and understanding. Professor Xylop approached, his exoskeleton still quivering slightly from the ordeal. Ms. Chen, your actions today were extraordinary. You've shown us all that the very adaptations that make humans terrifying are also what make you invaluable allies. Sarah, bandaged but smiling, looked around at her alien friends. That's the thing about humans, Professor. We may come from a death world, but that's taught us to value life all the more. And we'll do whatever it takes to protect it. Not just our own, but all life. Zix, his scales shimmering with admiration, spoke up. I think I finally understand. Your species doesn't just survive your world's dangers. You thrive on overcoming challenges. Blorp burbled in agreement. Indeed, perhaps we've been looking at humans all wrong. You're not terrifying because you're dangerous. You're inspiring because you never give up. Facet finished, their crystalline form glowing warmly. As Sarah looked at the diverse group of alien students around her, she felt a swell of pride and hope. The gap between Earth and the rest of the galaxy suddenly seemed a little smaller. "So," she said with a grin, "who's up for learning some more extreme Earth sports? I was thinking we could start with something nice and relaxing, like skydiving." The chorus of alarmed and excited alien voices that answered her made Sarah laugh. It was going to be an interesting semester indeed. And so, in the crucible of crisis, a new understanding was forged. The students of the Galactic University of Sciences had learned that diversity, even the scary Deathworld kind, could be their greatest strength. As for Sarah Chen, she had taken one giant leap for human-alien relations, proving that sometimes the most terrifying thing in the universe might just be your best hope for survival. The story of the Deathworlder Sarah Chen and her alien classmates was just beginning, but already it promised to change the galaxy's understanding of humanity forever.